Hello. Wow. I'm not sure what's more surprising that I got this to work or that I'm not actually alone. There's somebody else. There's two people here. Hi. Let's see. Hello, human evolution. How are you? Also, if it's easier for whoever's on the subreddit, Ask Me Anything, AMA, I have a live feed as well. So if it's easier to type your questions there, typing here works just as well. I'll keep that going live. All right. So I'm yours for the next hour, you guys. Ask me anything. Yes. So the question. Hi, Andrew. Hello to the UK from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So a good question here from Human Evolution. What does up to us mean in a deterministic system? What is the closest thing there is to having a free choice for the Stoics? I love this question, and I think Human Evolution. When you wrote to me yesterday, I mentioned I was literally writing this chapter for my third book that's coming up in a few months. By the way, Andrew, if you have a question, you can type it up. I'll see it on the feed. So, before I can answer the question of determinism versus free will, let's define a few terms. So, deterministic world. It's as someone who's agnostic and very logical, it's hard for me not to believe in a deterministic world, and I find it difficult to deny the logic behind it. The example I use in my first book is a ball. In this case, if I grab like a pen right here, and if I let it go, I know it's going to drop, right? Because we figured out the laws of gravity, we figured out the laws of nature that have to do with this pen falling down. And if it were a bouncy ball, let's say, and I knew the elasticity of the surface and the ball, and I could plug it all into a spreadsheet, I'd be able to determine also when I let it go how far up it's going to bounce up. So it gives, if we have, I should have turned my phone off. Hold on. Give me a second here. And silent. So if we have all the parameters, okay, if we've been able to crack the code, so the laws of science around whatever is happening, in this case, the little bouncy ball that we're dropping from height X, if we have all the laws around it, if we have all the variables, the wind, the surface elasticity, all of it, we can predict what's going to happen next. So in a small microcosm, we can predict, us humans can predict what's going to happen, right? Now, in a larger scale, the same logic applies if we go back to the Big Bang, which is what we know to be the furthest point in history, in the history of the universe. Clearly, there's something before that, but everything is a cause and consequence of what happened before it, right? The problem is there's only one machine that's big enough to be able to crunch all this data and information and variables and determine what's about to happen next, and that's the universe itself. Okay, so yes, we live in a deterministic world, universe. Everything is a consequence of what happens. Even ourselves, we like to think, we have free will, but let's be honest. If we could plug in all the variables of what we know, how we feel, what we're thinking, what we're seeing, any decision we do is based on, our preconceptions, our mood at that time. So if we could plug all those variables into a computer, hypothetically speaking, we'd be able to determine what decision we're going to make. The problem is, though, again, if the universe is the only machine that can see what's happening now with the variables, there's no machine that exists that can predict the future, which brings us back to free will. So determinism, everything is cause and consequence, that we have already. Sorry, I'm just refreshing the Reddit stream here to make sure there are no questions. And so determinism versus free will. Determinism, we've established. Free will. What is free will? Let's think of a cow in a herd, or a goat in a herd. A cow can choose which way it wants to walk, right? It'll choose to put one hoof in front of the other to go this way and follow the herd because it's a herd animal. But then consider this: the cow has been genetically over thousands of years trained to follow the herd. So even though the cow is choosing to follow the herd using its free will, does it really have free choice? Is it really free will? These are philosophical questions that don't have an actual answer because it becomes a question of semantics. Personally, I love these type of questions. Another duality I like to discuss a lot is materialism versus idealism, for example. There is no right answer by the nature of the question. So determinism versus free will, there's arguments on both sides. They both make sense. Now, what do I think about it as a Stoic? It's very simple. Yes, I believe in determinism because the logic is sound. However, the illusion of free will is all too real. I have free choice. I mean, right now, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know. I haven't decided ahead of time what I'm going to do next. I can pick up and drop this pen because I feel like it. But I know there was a cause and consequence of events before. Example, me explaining this concept to you guys, that led to me picking up the pen and dropping it. So it's an illusion. However, it is there, which means I still have to make good choices, even though it's an illusion, right? What I like to say is we're both spectators of the universal script and the actors. We can't see the future. We can't remember the future. So as a Stoic, the simple answer to up to us in a deterministic system is it doesn't matter. That's the Stoic answer. It doesn't matter. It does not change how I live. It doesn't change what I need to do to be a better person. So as a Stoic, I don't care. As a philosopher, it's really fun to discuss. So I hope human evolution that answers your question a little bit. Again, there's no straight answers, right? But the Stoic answer would be, at least the way I interpret Stoicism, it does not affect the way we live a good life worthy of living today. All right, next question. Let's check it out. And if you have a follow-up question, human evolution, please go ahead, type it up. All right, Andrew, how do you interpret God in the Stoic texts? Did the ancients have an inner robustness advantage due to every circumstance being rationally ordered? Okay, cool. So the word God in ancient texts is, the Epictetus and Seneca would use Zeus also, God, the gods in plural. All of these mean the universe, the cosmos. Spinoza's God, right? Stoics were pantheists. There is a God, they believe in a God, but it is everything that's in the cosmos, everything that makes it work. So a theist might hear a Stoic's definition of what God and spirituality is and think, you're agnostic, you're atheist. An atheist will hear what we have to say and say, oh, you're pretty religious. Stoicism, again, is somewhere in between the two. And so the ancients, when they did use the word God or Zeus, they referred to the cosmos. Now, as far as inner robustness advantage due to every circumstance being rationally ordered, I mean, we got to remember that we're reading the best that the ancients had to offer, right? Marcus's Meditations is what he was telling himself he should be doing at the end of his life. So it was his smartest ideas that he was writing down on paper, saying this is what you should be doing. Doesn't mean he lived that way, right? Seneca, we know he was far from being an actually good practicing Stoic. His ideas were fantastic. His ideas are sound. We still learn from him today, but he himself judges himself harshly so many times in his texts. He did not live as a Stoic. Epictetus, he was probably the closest thing to being an actual living or living by his words. So did they have an inner robustness because we're able to see everything in a rational order? Sure, but no more than you and me. You and I are working just as hard to be able to live rationally. We're going through this COVID thing. I'm sure, Andrew, in the UK, you guys, I know you're in lockdown as well since 2 3 days. Myself, this is day 13 at home. It's not easy. It's difficult. And I look across Canada. I know in my country, at least people are, without paychecks. They're worrying how we're going to pay for the mortgage, the rent, the food. And then there are people who are worried about getting the sickness, the disease, all the unknowns, unprecedented times. I've been practicing Stoicism in a very disciplined fashion for at least 5 years. And right here, I still feel that anxiety with everything that's happening. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel emotions and anxiety. I do. However, I work very hard through the practices, through the exercises that I share with you guys on my Patreon page, to be able to keep thinking with the rational mind. So am I rational 100% of the time? Absolutely not. Am I more robust internally compared to 5, 10 years ago? Absolutely. So I think the ancients would have fallen into the same kind of pattern. They were not perfect. They were not sages, but they did. Obviously, they had the right dogmas and precepts, if you will, that they practiced. I hope that answers your question, Andrew. If you have a follow-up, please type it up. I'm all yours. Let's see on Reddit. Hello, Joey Tools. How are you, homie? All right. Good question. Andrew, before I move on to the next one, actually, to go back to the rational mind and the inner robustness. So I wear this coin around my neck. If you go on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Anderson Silver, there's a close-up picture of this ancient Roman coin. I know it's shining here. It's a denarius from Marcus Aurelius's time. It was minted in 172 to 173 AD. It was only minted for a year. So I searched for this for quite a while before finding it. And even the coin that I found is not complete. It's kind of broken. The reason I wear this around my neck is precisely to remind myself of the rational, ordered mind versus the emotions that we feel. So on one side of the coin, it's Marcus Aurelius himself, his bust in the back. And on the other side is he's commemorating Commodus, his son. Commodus, of course, as we know, was one of the worst, absolute worst emperors to rule Rome. Excuse me. Marcus being the last great emperor. So this coin reminds me of that dichotomy we have within. We are bipedal, hairless monkey beings. Emotions are a survival mechanism that comes with this vessel, this biosuit that we live in. Okay. Our consciousness, and this is going to tie in nicely to our next question, Andrew. Our consciousness, our rational mind, the little extra that's inside of us, that lives in here, is not really to approach the duality problem. And so it's important to accept that we are going to have emotions and we are going to feel frustration and anger and all this stuff. It's always going to be there. It's never going to go away, and there's no way to shut it off. The goal then is not to ignore it or suppress it, but to keep trying as hard as we can to go back to the rational mind, try to think logically and intelligently. If you guys are Star Trek buffs out there, I know Joey Tools, we've spoken about this with him before. He's a big Star Trek buff. Think Vulcans, right? Think logical, just straight up.